welcome Bill Bennett.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. I'm Bill Bennett ASC. This was some amazing footage. So we had a tremendous time shooting that. So I'll tell you a little bit about how we did it. About 3 months ago, Aeroflex came to me and said, hey, we've got this really interesting lens. Would you like to shoot something with it? So I went down to the office and I looked at it on the camera, and the lens is really remarkable. It's actually on the Alexa M right here beside me. On the wide end, it's 9.5. On the long end, it's 18. And the lens is a T29. Now, the significant thing was they said, what would you like to do? And I have actually a good friend in Dan Wolf, who's out here in the audience somewhere, who owns Wolf Hair. Oh, there he is standing right there. Owns Wolf Hair, who owns Learjets and helicopters and also propeller-driven aircraft to do aerials. And I said to Dan, hey, I'd love to shoot downtown Los Angeles with this lens. And what the lens is capable of is very, very low distortion. On the wide end, it's 1% distortion. On the long end, it's 0.1% distortion, which means that all these lines of the buildings and the horizon line are going to be straight. Now, you have the perspective of looking down the buildings as you would expect, but none of the buildings near the edge of the frame are bowed or curved. So I expected that was what was going to happen. So I said, let's shoot downtown Los Angeles. And Dan made it work for us. And then the technical people at ARRI gathered up all the camera equipment for us. And let me tell you a little bit about the zoom. Like I said, it's ultra low distortion. It's also very high resolution. When I projected the lens at their office, I was completely blown away how sharp it was. And even though this is an iPhone photo of the chart, even here you can see that the lines are straight, which for a lens this wide is very unusual. The lens also has built-in lens data systems so that in post-production, the compositors will know exactly what the focal length was, or what the focus was, or the camera tilt down or roll over for every single frame, and that's embedded in the metadata and carried forward in post-production. At any point, people can pull the metadata out of the header and find out all this information. Say if you're going to composite something into a frame, you'd know exactly what the focal length was. It has a very large image circle diameter so that it covers open gate Alexa, which is the largest sensor, also covers the large sensors of other manufacturers as well. And here's something a little bit techy. The entrance pupil, the point on the front of the lens where the light enters, is fixed as you zoom. Other zoom lenses, it moves forwards and backwards considerably, and if you're doing effects, that makes them nuts, because the actual virtual camera they have to superimpose on the real camera has to then move forwards and backwards in addition to any other camera movement to get the image to fit. The lens weighs about just shy of 10 pounds and is a little over 1 foot 1 inch long. So the helicopter we flew on is very, very unusual. It's one of a kind. Wolf Air, it's part of his fleet. It has quick change mounts on the front and the back. To get the mount on typical helicopter could be half a day to put the mount on the helicopter. This one, you remove that plug and that one, and this thing bayonets in, and then you hang the helicopter mount on it. I'll talk about that in just a second. The mount can be put on the front and then most recently on the back, so you can shoot the front of aircraft that are flying toward you or flying along with you. The helicopter itself was originally ordered by Steve Fawcett to be built new at the factory with a rotor system from a much larger helicopter and 2 engines. The Bell 406 has one of these engines. That's a 5-person helicopter. This is also a 5-person helicopter. It has 2 of them. The purpose he wanted to build this, if you remember Steve, before he unfortunately had the airplane crash and died up in the Sierra Nevadas, was he would love to set world records and still holds many world records for ballooning around the world, flying around the world, sailing around the world. His goal was to fly around the world in this helicopter and land on the highest peak in every continent. Now that included Mount Everest. So this helicopter has a service ceiling of 35,000 feet, so it can climb up to and land on the top of Mount Everest. Of course, they'd be breathing oxygen and all this sort of stuff. And then in the back, it has a long-range ferry tanks to do the over-ocean segments. So the Wolf Air Aviation helicopter stabilized mount is called the Gyron Horizon. Right now, we've taken the covers off the front of it and off the back, so you can see the camera fitted in here. It's a very highly stabilized mount. It uses dual nested gimbals. I'm giving away some of the secrets. The outer gimbal steers the inner gimbal to close to where it needs to be. The inner gimbal is driven by linear motors that have very high frequency capability up into the kilohertz, so that all that high frequency vibration can be damped out with these direct drive motors. And then they've added recently the ability to track the horizon. If anybody's done any aerial cinematography, one of the problems is many times the director wants you to start out looking at the ground. To get into position, the helicopter has been maneuvering heavily, pulling G's, banked up, and the computers in the stabilized mount get confused and they think that down is now over there. And while you're looking at the ground, it's rolled the horizon over. And then when you tilt up and look at the horizon, guess what? It's like that. So this mount compensates for that. So when you tilt up and look at the horizon, it's completely straight tracking the whole time. Here's the Alexa M that's here, right here. You can look at it afterwards, sitting on the bench with the lens fitted on it. They have a special custom lens tray with the drive motors attached to it. All of it's very small and slim, so it can fit in the ball. You want it to be as small as possible for wind drag, because the helicopter can fly very quickly. The camera we shot in ARRI RAW 4x3 open gate. We didn't do open gate because this particular model at that time couldn't do it. The camera can go up to 90 frames per second or as slow as 0.75 frames per second. A little bit of trivia. Many people say, why does the camera go 0.75 frames per second, not 1 frame per second, not 5 frames per second? The reason is 0.75 is an even divisor of 24. So when we're doing motion control shots where we're scaling the move down, you get down to 1.5, and then the next divider of that is 0.75. So when the camera was being designed, I asked them to include 0.75, and they did. So the camera connects to the camera head, camera body in the helicopter with a fiber link. And Wolf Air does a very clever thing where they bring the fiber up, and it's very hard to get fiber to work in slip rings because the camera is panning about. So they have about 20 wraps of fiber in a tray, and then a turn limiter that limits it so you don't ever turn more than 20 wraps one way or the other to solve this system. So the fiber has no break, comes up and plugs into the camera body that's sitting here literally on the seat next to me. We're recording ARRI RAW on an XR recorder, which is on the other side of the camera. You guys can come and see it over here. The huge advantage of that is, in flight, I can change media. That is so huge because there's all kinds of limitations in flying helicopters of where you can land them, how far you can fly on the amount of fuel. Fuel is limited by how high you need to go and how many people you have in the helicopter. So the ability, prior to this, you would always not shoot a lot until you got there and then shoot the moment and hope that it worked. Now we can shoot on the way out, shoot early to work out our move, and then shoot through the magic moment of sunrise or whatever it is, and that could be 20 miles out at sea where there's no opportunity to land. So there's really no possibility of running out of film, in other words. You can always stick new cartridges in it. The thing laying right here is actually the remote controller that allows us to control all the functions of the camera. It's called the RCU4, and my camera assistant was sitting here, and he would control the camera, and then I would use this monitor to control exposure, and this one for viewfinding, and then on my lap is the pan, tilt, zoom, focus controller. So I was doing focus, iris, zoom, pan, and tilt during all of this. And then the camera itself, being that ARRI Alexas are 24 up to 34 volt cameras, we don't have to worry about battery power supply. We're powering it directly from the helicopter's power bus. So as you saw in the video, at times we were low. This is an iPhone video. My camera assistant shot out the window. Even the birds were frightened. So I gotta say thank you very much to all the people from ARRI and Wolf Air Aviation, our two fantastic pilots. We're John Canborough and John Ryan, and then the engineers that built the thing and helped us install it at the last moment, and then of course all the gentlemen from ARRI.